You're listening to Cowboy Logic with Jason Forby, a message of grace and hope.
Is everybody good?
Good morning. It's kind of weird being here when Jason's here. It's like trying to take a test with the teacher looking over your shoulder or something. That's a little weird. Jason's been talking quite a bit about the woman with the issue of blood lately, and I've become a little bit obsessed with her. So I've done quite a bit of studying. I enjoy going down in those rabbit holes. So I just want to share with you some of the things that I've found in studying that part of the Bible, and also some of the things that Holy Spirit has shown me during it. So first of all, we all know the story. Jesus and Jairus were on the way to Jairus' house to heal Jairus' daughter, and they were interrupted by this woman. Now, Jairus was kind of an important person in that time, and so I'm sure he probably wasn't real happy by this particular woman interrupting them. The story was told in 3 out of the 4 Gospels, but no one ever mentions her name. They don't tell us who she is. Matthew, Mark, and Luke all talk about this woman. I don't know why John didn't. Maybe he was in the bathroom or something that was happening. But nobody mentions her name. They don't tell us who she is. And maybe they didn't know her name, but maybe it had something to do with the culture at the time and the way that they thought about women. Women were second-class citizens back then. They didn't have all the rights that men had. They were considered intellectually inferior to men, so they were denied education. They had limited access to own property or receive inheritance or anything like that. So they also couldn't testify in court. I found that interesting because their legal standing was considered the same as a child or a slave. So their testimony was not valid in the court at that time. They could attend a synagogue and they could listen to the Torah being read, but they could not read it themselves publicly. They definitely would not have been up here speaking. They were restricted really to domestic duties. Their place was in the home. It was like barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen kind of philosophy back then. We don't know really if this woman was a wife or a mom, but a lot of biblical scholars say that she probably had been married because she had money to spend to pay physicians. And women didn't really have money back then, but if they were married, there was a marriage contract called a ketubah. And that ketubah gave her the right to some money if the man were to leave her. So they assume that's probably where she got the money. Either way, if she was married, 12 years without being able to perform her wifely duties would have given the husband legal grounds for divorce. She's not named in the Bible, but she had a name. People knew her. She had parents, she had family, maybe a husband, maybe children. They knew her name. She had friends, female friends. They would have met up in the women's court outside of the temple. People knew her, who she was. She had an identity. She had a purpose until the condition started, until bleeding began. She had a life prior to that. Do you know about the women's court? I learned that just in this study too. It was just outside the temple. Women could gather that far in, but they couldn't go all the way in. They weren't allowed. They would gather in the women's court, and they could pray, and they could worship and listen to music. And if they could get a good seat, they could peek over the balcony to see what the men were doing. But that was as close as they could get to the place where they believed God's presence dwelt. The women's court was only a little bit closer than the dogs or the Gentiles could enter. And I'm a little bit sore about the way that I've learned they treated women back there. It's interesting that it is the Day of the Woman or whatever, because it wasn't very good for women back then. So I'm still a little bit sore about it. I don't know if that's coming through or not, but I really am grateful for a church where women are loved and appreciated and encouraged to be who they are. Yeah. My point, anyway, is that this woman had a life. She had purpose. She had an identity. But when the bleeding began, she became an unnamed woman. She became a woman now known in the community, now identified by, now labeled by her condition, her problem. She became the woman with the issue of blood. We don't know what caused the bleeding. Could have been anything, but for 12 years straight, this woman bled. Now, ladies, let's have a moment of silence. In honor and respect and sympathy for any woman that could survive that, let alone continue trying to get help and search for something better, right? Can I get an amen? She spent all the money that she had, wherever that money came from, she spent it all on physicians trying to get some help. But the Bible says not only did she not get better, she got worse. Well, when I looked up the medical procedures at that time, I understand why she might have gotten worse. They're interesting and gross. But I'm going to tell you about them anyway. First of all, they would have tried to scare her near death. Literally to frighten her to a point that her body would go into shock to restrict the bleeding. She might have drank goat urine. Don't ask me why on that one. I told you these were gross. She might have been instructed to apply excrement mixed with vinegar. They would have tied ligatures around her groin and her armpits, believing that they could get the blood flow away from the uterus. She would have gone long periods of time with those ligatures tied around her. They would have tried bloodletting, which is just a fancy way of saying that they cut her somewhere else, thinking that they could drain the excess blood from her body. Then there were vaginal pessaries. Can I say that word in here on the www? We'll just call them pessaries. There were these things called pessaries. Sorry. They would mix alum, which is from the onion family, and tree sap. Think Chevy Chase in Christmas Vacation. Remember, little full, a lot of sap, and everything stuck to him. Onion, tree sap, and where's the other thing? Oh, egg yolk. Then they would wrap it in wool and stuff it, hoping it would act as an astringent that would decrease the blood flow. Wool, ladies. Rough, itchy wool. Oh, this one's interesting too. They may have mixed an onion, cumin, crocus, and something called fenugreek, which is a clover. I had to Google that too. And put it in wine and then make her drink it. Now, one of the side effects of that was severe, possibly fatal diarrhea. So drink the ick in the wine, maybe get drunk, poop your pants, you're still not healed. Which this kind of sounds a lot like those commercials they give you now where they tell you all the side effects. So no wonder she got worse. I believe she probably got her hopes up every time too. They weren't crazy remedies at the time. At the time, I believe she got her hopes up every time that this would work, only to be disappointed again and again and again. When Luke wrote about her in his gospel, Luke was a physician. He believed in the science of medicine, and he declared in his gospel, he declared no one could heal this woman. I'm kind of glad he said that, because it's really kind of proof that in our Bible that sometimes physicians are wrong, and there is someone who can heal. The culture at the time, they believed that if you were sick, if you had any kind of a physical affliction, it was an indicator of sin. You had some kind of sin, and you were being punished by God. You were cursed by God. Your pain and your sickness and your suffering was some kind of justice given by him. They would have condemned her for being sick. According to Jewish law at the time, any woman who was on her monthly cycle was deemed unclean for the time she was having her cycle, and then also for 7 days after. Half of every month, these women were deemed unclean. They couldn't touch anyone. If they were to touch someone, that person would become unclean too, is what they believed. If they touched an object, no one else could touch that object. So if a woman were to sit on a chair during her cycle, no one else could sit on that chair. It's a good thing I didn't live back then, because I'd have sat on every chair in the house and then giggled while the men had to stand on their feet or sit on the floor. But that is not what happened. They couldn't touch anything. They couldn't touch anyone. During their cycle, they couldn't touch their family members, their loved ones, their friends. If they touched an item, nobody else could touch it. Half of every month. But for this woman, it was 12 years. Her husband had the right to divorce her for not performing her wifely duties, so the one who was supposed to love her left her alone in her sickness. If she had children, she couldn't touch them. She couldn't hold them. She couldn't brush the hair back out of their eyes. She couldn't console them if they cried. Her own parents would not have held her to console her in her sickness. 12 years, no hugs, no kisses, no high fives, no pats on the back, no tender gestures of love or support. No one held her hand. No one would have helped her carry her pots of water when she was feeling weak from blood loss. I'm betting they didn't even smile at her. I bet they avoided her gaze. I don't want to make eye contact. They were probably afraid of her. Don't make eye contact with the unclean thing. They were afraid, and they condemned her. They ignored her. They shunned her, marginalized her, isolated her. She was an outcast. Some of us know what that feels like. She was invisible. She was forgotten by friends and loved ones. Even the church folk didn't want her. I think it's important to dwell on that, on the way that she felt that day, because it's humanity. We feel this way. We've all felt this way at times. And I think in order to fully grasp what he did on that day, we have to think about the way she felt for all of these years. We have to know it wasn't just the physical condition. There was so much other suffering that was going on in her. She wasn't just condemned by the community. She condemned herself. She believed the same law that they did. And for 12 years, she cursed herself. She would have to announce herself when she was near people. Unclean, unclean, unclean. Everywhere she went, she was forced for 12 years to speak word curses over herself. I so identify with that. Drug addict, criminal. But she heard about Jesus. And Jesus had performed many healings in that time. It was a buzz, right? If there was an internet back then, it would have been blowing up with news about Jesus. Everybody was talking about him and sharing how he had healed all of these people. And she heard it. I guarantee you she wasn't part of the conversation. She just overheard it as she scurried along around the outskirts of the square or around other people. The more she heard, the more the hope arose. Faith and hope in the man named Jesus overrode the hopelessness of her condition. If I can only touch the hem of his garment. The hem of his garment is not really an accurate translation. It makes sense to us Americans because we don't understand a lot of Jewish customs. But she wasn't really speaking of the hem of his garment like we consider it. We think it's the bottom of your robe or the finished end of your pants or something where we hem it in. But that's not what it was. Scholars say it was tassels that would have been worn on the prayer shawl of a Jewish man. Jesus was Jewish. He would have had on this prayer shawl, and on every corner would have been tied a tassel. The name of the tassel is the tzitzit. Isn't that a fun word to say? Tzitzit, tzitzit. There would have been one of these hanging on every corner of Jesus' prayer shawl. It's worn still today by Jewish men. A lot of the Orthodox Jews today, they wear them on it's like a kind of an undergarment, and these hang down in their clothes, but they still wear them today. The tzitzit represents holiness. It's kind of a string around your finger reminder of the commandments of God's laws. When they went through the day and, the tassel's flying, you're seeing the tassel and reminded to obey the commandments, to obey the laws of God. The numerical value of the Hebrew word tzitzit is 600. Combined with 8 threads and 5 knots, that totals 613. There were 613 commandments in the Torah. The blue represents heaven and authority. If I only touch the tzitzit. I wonder how long she rehearsed it. I wonder how long it was before or when she first heard about Jesus until the day that he come to town. I imagine it might have been a little while. Word was spreading pretty fast, and, he went all different places, and it took some time. And I wonder how long she thought to herself, if only I could touch the hem of his garment. I'd like to know, because I'd like there to be a formula. If I say this thing to myself this many times, or if I think about it this long, then I'll have the faith that I need. There's no formula. They don't tell us how long it was. But finally, one day, she would have heard, Jesus is coming. It's him. It's the healer. Jesus is coming. Here he comes. I can imagine the excitement in her. I can imagine how she felt. Today's the day. Now's my time. I'm going to get my chance. I'm going to get my healing. But I also know the conflict that she must have felt inside. We all know the conflict somewhere between our head and our heart. You can't touch him. You're dirty. If you touch him, you'll defile him. But I don't even need to touch him. I just need to touch the hem of his garment. I just need to touch the tassel. I would be healed. You can't touch him. There's no healing for you. You're incurable. They said so. But he's healed so many people. Yeah, but not you. Not you. Besides, you'll never make it to him. You'll never make it through the crowd. They know who you are. They know what you've done. They know what you've got. They'll stone you before you make it to Jesus. That conflict that goes on inside of us. I'm sure the enemy just shouted accusations and doubt and condemnation and everything that he could to keep her from going to Jesus. But somewhere inside of her, something else rose. Hope and faith stirred in her and stirred and stirred. I imagine that feeling, when God tells you plainly to do something and you're like, I don't know if I want to say that thing or do that thing. I'm feeling kind of weird about it. They might think I'm weird. I don't know. But still, Holy Spirit stirs in you. And there comes a point where you can't not do it. There comes a point where it just bursts out of you, where you just have to go and you just have to do the thing. And I imagine that happening in her standing there in that conflict for so long until she couldn't hold back anymore. I imagine her throwing down whatever she had in her hands and hiking up her dress and running in the direction of Jesus. She pushed through the crowd. She fought her way. She had to. There were so many people blocking her. So many religious people in between her and the person of Jesus. But she had to get through and yet not draw attention to herself. She tried to sneak up on Jesus, really. She did sneak up on Jesus. She snuck up behind him. And when she got close enough, she reached out. She reached hard. She reached as far as she could. And eventually she touched it. She touched the tassel, the hem of his garment. She touched Jesus. In her hand was a religious item that represented the law that condemned her. But it was still the place that she touched Jesus. It doesn't matter if our theology is right. It doesn't matter what we believe about ourselves or other people. It doesn't matter if we got it right or wrong. The only thing that matters is Jesus. And he will meet us where we are, anywhere, anytime, in any way, he will meet us. The Greek word for the way that she touched him is hapsada. It wasn't an ordinary touch. They had a different word for just normal touching. Hapsada meant a deliberate, intense touch, a connection, a clinging to adhere to unite yourself with. Specifically, it was used often to describe fastening fire to a thing. If you take the fire that you have on a torch and you touch it to another thing, they unite and the fire goes from one to the other and both walk away with the fire. She didn't just touch Jesus. With all of the strength left inside of her, she hapsaded him and she received fire and was healed. Now, the Jesus that I know and love, he of course, he didn't stop there. He didn't stop with just physical healing. He turned around and he said, "Who touched me?" And they all thought he was crazy because everybody's touching you. But he knew he'd been hapsaded. He felt that fire leave him and ignite someone else. Can you imagine, though, the fear that she felt again? She'd been caught. She'd been busted. She couldn't sneak. She got her healing, but they knew. They knew she was there. He knew she was there. And now he's asking who did it. And she's surrounded by all these people that have condemned her for 12 years. She could be stoned to death for touching the rabbi. And still she came out of that fear and she fell at the feet of Jesus and she told him the whole story. Now I like the fact that he didn't condemn her. He didn't embarrass her. He did the opposite. He did what most people would not have done for a woman back then. He gave her his undivided attention in a crowd of who knows how many people. Jesus gave this woman his undivided attention. She told him the whole story. She told him what she'd been through, how she'd suffered. She told him about her physical ailments. I bet she told him all of it. And he listened. The crowd was listening too, I guarantee you. I guarantee you they heard him address her. They saw him pay attention to her. They heard what she's been through. They might have still thought they were right to condemn her in the way they did. I don't know, but Jesus didn't. He did something different. He addressed her and he said, "Daughter, your faith has made you whole. Go in peace." Daughter. Not woman, not ma'am, not dear, not you poor unclean thing. He called her Barat. Barat means my daughter. It denotes a tender, compassionate, familial covenant. You're mine, And you are special. It's a term of endearment. You know those terms we give each other, they hit different. When someone that you love, that loves you, calls you by one of those names, it hits different. My grandchildren, they have never once said, Renee, Tate, would you come over here? But when they say Nana, ooh-wee, I look like Robin Williams and Mrs. Doubtfire. Help is on the way, dear. When he's leaping over the tables and everything to get to him, just one word, Nana. And here I come. It was a term of endearment like that. That's how Jesus addressed this woman. See, the men didn't care to write your name in the Bible, but you've got a new name now. You are no longer an unnamed woman. You are no longer the woman with the issue of blood. You are the daughter of the Most High, and you are loved. He restored her. He physically healed her, but he didn't stop there. He restored her standing in the community. They were all gathered around. They were listening. They were paying attention to this man that performed these miracles and how he addressed this woman. They knew the word barat. They knew what it meant. They knew now that something is different. Whatever she's gone through for these past 12 years, she has a new identity now. She is a chosen one. She is a loved one. She is a special one. They heard, and he restored her standing in the community. Imagine how they wanted to be around her after that. I bet they didn't isolate her anymore. I bet they surrounded her. I bet everyone wanted to know the story. Tell us about him. Tell us about that day. Tell us about Jesus. What happened to you? She was not alone anymore. Those people would have wanted to be around her. I think about the first hug she got after 12 years with no physical contact. I don't know who it would have been. I don't know that it really matters who it had been. It might have been her children who were waiting, longing to hug her too. It might have been her friends. It might have been parents. It might have been family. It might have been a stranger. But I can imagine what that hug felt like. I can imagine it because I've experienced going without physical contact. Everybody knows I was in the Department of Corrections for a while, and you're not allowed any physical contact in there. And when family would come to visit, you get one hug. You could hug them one time, and it was never long enough, and it was, but the power of that touch. I also know kind of what it might have been like because I've witnessed it. Some of you know this story, but years back, I had a friend in the community. She was a homeless woman. I had been around her quite a bit. She lived on the streets in Anna for over a decade. Similarly, she was unnamed to most. They'd refer to her as the crying woman who danced in the streets. She has a name. Her name is Melissa. I'll tell you her name now. And Melissa is a very kind soul. Very sweet, very loving, very giving. She didn't have anything, but she'd have handed it right to you. She literally would have taken the clothes off her back and handed them to you if she thought that you were cold. She spoke often about her children, but she didn't remember where they were. She didn't remember how she got to Anna even 10 years before. She was mentally ill. We could give her a label if we wanted to, but I'll just call her daughter and chosen one and loved one, special to God, because God worked some miracles for her. She would keep me very busy. I would keep coats and clothes and shoes and stuff in the back of my car, and I'd see her about every other day. And in the winter, I could stop and give her a coat in the morning, and by the time I got off work in the afternoon, she was riding a stolen bicycle in nothing but a tank top and spandex shorts. Really, in the cold. So we spent quite a bit of time together, and I had the pleasure of getting to know her. We were going to the depot, and I asked her many times to come into the depot, but she was rather nervous around people, especially crowds of people, and she wasn't coming. But one night she came in. One night she came in and she ate. Man, we had good food there, and she ate and she ate and she ate. And before she left, us ladies gathered around her and laid our hands on her and prayed for her. And there wasn't any obvious thing that happened to her that night after we prayed, but she left the depot, and I went home, and I had a new strange thought. After all those years, I'd had a new idea. Someone must be looking for her. She must have family somewhere. Someone loves her. Someone must be looking for her. So I got on Facebook, and sure enough, she had a 10-year-old account. She had a really unique last name, so it wasn't too hard to figure out that people were family on there, And I sent out some messages, and I went to bed. And before 5 a.m. the next morning, the messages were piling in on Facebook Messenger. Her family had been looking for her for over a decade. Her sister had been hunting everywhere and been on numerous trips when they'd heard she was somewhere, and to no avail. She couldn't find her, couldn't get her. Her son, who she spoke of often, he was 20 years old now at that point, and he had been fervently searching for her since he had aged out of foster care at 18, trying to find his mom. Well, they found her, and they were coming to get her. And they were coming all the way from Detroit. Yeah, and they wanted to come right then, and I was working, and we had to schedule it for Saturday, and on Saturday, we all waited patiently and praying. Were they really coming? Did they really mean what they said? Long trip. Well, they came, and when they got close, I went hunting for Melissa, and I couldn't find her. It was, of all the times, we could always find her, and I couldn't find her that night. And B.J. Hale came out and helped me look, and eventually we found her. And I told her what was going on, and she got in the car, and we started to leave town. And about the time we got near the interstate, she became terrified. She hadn't left Anna for 10 years. She didn't understand really where we were going. She was just terrified. So we had to turn around once, come back to Anna. She talked to BJ again, and BJ convinced her to go. And we get on the road, and we head up the interstate, and she's terrified. She's fidgeting, and she's saying, "Take me back," and then saying, "No, let's go." And she's crying, and then she's laughing, and she's just really afraid. We get a ways up the interstate, and we pull off at the gas station where we had prearranged to meet them, and we sit and we wait. And she's in the car, and she's out of the car, and she's in the restroom, and she's back outside, and she's fixing her hair, and then the next moment she's messing up her hair, and she's just all over the place, tears and laughter and fear, nervous wreck. If there was ever a definition of a nervous wreck, it was her in that situation. And eventually, this van pulls in, and they come flying in, and before the vehicle is even stopped, this young man jumps out. And he has the passenger door of my car open, and he falls his entire body into, you all know my little car? He fell completely into the front seat of that car on his mama that he hadn't seen for over a decade. And at first, Melissa was startled. I was too, because he moved so quick. It came so hard, At first, she was startled, but she touched his face kind of and backed up and looked at him, and she knew. She recognized him. And she wrapped her arms around him, and he wrapped her arms around her, and she let out a sound that I wasn't even an earthly sound. It was a wail. This wail came out of her that lasted minutes upon minutes as she held this boy. I think it was a combination of the pain and the suffering and the grief and the anguish, all of that leaving her body at the same time that love and joy and peace and fulfillment and contentment came in. It's like there was an abrasion happening between all of this stuff leaving her body and entering. I've never heard a sound like it again, and I'm convinced if love has a sound, that was it that day. So that's what I imagine for the woman with the issue of blood when she was finally welcomed back into her community, back into the arms of people who loved her. That's what I imagine. Maybe They left the woman's name out of the Bible on purpose so I could put my name in there. We could put Melissa's name in there. You can put your name in there. We've all suffered. Maybe it was physical pain. Maybe it was emotional hurt. Maybe it was childhood trauma. Maybe it was our own way of thinking. We isolated to protect ourselves. I don't know, but we've all suffered, and we've suffered long enough because it's time to meet the real person of Jesus. The Jesus who doesn't just heal you physically. You may be able to meet him alone. You can meet him alone because I have, but he won't leave you alone. He will build a community around you. There's a scripture that I learned we're studying this stuff too, and it was in Malachi 4, 4. And it said, "But unto you who revere my name, the Son of Righteousness will rise with healing in its wings, and you will go forth to frolic and leap like calves led out to pasture." Now, I'm not a cow person, so I had to Google what does that look like. And you can find videos for anything. TikTok, Google, YouTube, you should really look that up and see what it looks like for cows who are frolicking out in a field, because it looks pretty doggone fun. And guess what? The Son of Righteousness with healing in his wings. This is the wings. It's Jesus. His intent for us is to be well physically, but not just to be physically healthy, but to frolic and leap and play like these cows, these fat cows running and jumping out in the field and kicking dirt up behind them as they run. Udders and other things are swinging while they run, right? That's his intention for us, to enjoy an abundant life with every good thing. Not one good thing will he withhold from us, he said. And for me, one of the biggest blessings has been community. We talked about that a little bit in the past couple of weeks too. It's amazing if our eyes are on Jesus, no matter which way, where we're meeting him, if our eyes are on Jesus, he will transform us. He will transform us from the inside out, but he will give you people to love you from the outside in. We don't have to be outcast and alone. We don't have to be unclean. With none of that stuff anymore when we meet the person of Jesus. I can't say for sure what he did for the woman with the issue of blood, but I know what he's done for me, and I'm pretty confident what he'll do with you. And people will pop up around you like the flowers do in the spring, out of nowhere, and then you walk out one day and they're there. There's people to love you until you can love yourself. He'll give you friends who find joy in watching you get joy. Friends who can relate to your issue and they don't leave when it's messy. Friends who'll buy you ice cream when you're having a hard time. Friends who'll check on you every single day when you're having a hard time. Mamas who will hug you until you can breathe deep again. Mamas who will get up in the morning and bring you a cake. Not just a piddly little slice of cake, the whole darn cake, so that you feel better. Men who will teach you that love is safe. People who will wrap around you and help you and support you and encourage you and hold you up when you cannot stand. People who will stir the spirit and the life inside of you when you've forgotten that it's there. He will build a community around you. He loves you that much. He wants you to have all good things. And once he's built that community around you, we'll all run around just fat and happy like those cows in the field. He's that good, and he loves you that much, and he will restore you as well.
Please follow and share this message. And for more information, visit srcowboychurch.com.